worst thing about walking into Alderwick Hall was not seeing her former husband with another woman. It was discovering that her heart still remembered how to hurt. Lady Alara Vane stopped beneath the enormous crystal chandelier while nearly 200 guests moved around her in silk, satin, black coats, diamonds, and practiced smiles. At the opposite end of the ballroom stood Lord Adrian Crestwood, her former husband. Beside him stood the woman he intended to marry. Miss Cecily Harcourt was everything society believed a second wife ought to be. 23, golden-haired, beautifully dressed, untouched by scandal, and smiling as though life had never once forced her to beg for dignity. Adrian bent toward Cecily and whispered something. She laughed. That laugh should not have mattered. Alara had been free of him for 2 years. 2 years since Parliament dissolved a marriage that had once been whispered about across drawing rooms from York to London. 2 years since she stopped being Lady Crestwood. 2 years since she discovered that freedom could still carry scars. Yet for one humiliating second, she remembered another ballroom, another season. Another version of herself standing beside Adrian while he accepted congratulations for financial decisions she had made. He had called her clever in private when her calculations rescued his estate, then foolish in public whenever she asked to be acknowledged. By the end of their marriage, Adrian had mastered the art of reducing her without ever raising his voice. You worry too much. You misunderstand business. You are becoming emotional again. Those sentences had done more damage than shouting ever could. Alara? Her aunt touched her elbow. You are staring. Alara forced her gaze away. I was admiring the flowers. Her aunt looked toward Adrian. Of course. Alara almost smiled. She had not wanted to attend the engagement celebration. Unfortunately, avoiding it would have cost her far more than pride. Alderwick Hall belonged to her maternal uncle, Sir Benedict Rowley, who was hosting the evening because Cecily Harcourt was his wife's niece. More importantly, 3 trustees connected to Alara's divorce settlement were attending. Adrian had recently challenged one clause of that settlement. The matter concerned Belhaven Farm, a profitable piece of land legally transferred to Alara after the divorce. Her solicitor had warned her that disappearing from society while Adrian circulated rumors would make her appear frightened. So she came. She wore deep blue instead of morning gray. She lifted her chin, and she promised herself she would remain exactly 90 minutes. She lasted 27 before Adrian approached her. Alara, her spine stiffened. She turned. Adrian looked almost unchanged. Dark blonde hair, handsome features, that effortless expression of amusement that had once convinced her he could never be cruel because cruel men were supposed to look cruel. Adrian. His eyes swept across her gown. You look well. So do you. Cecily stood beside him. She gave Alara a sympathetic smile that somehow felt worse than contempt. I have wanted to meet you. Alara doubted that. How kind. Cecily glanced around. I confess, when Adrian told me you might attend, I thought he was mistaken. Adrian smiled into his wine. Alara understood immediately. The performance had begun. I hope my presence does not inconvenience you. Not at all, Cecily replied. I simply thought seeing us together might be uncomfortable. 3 nearby conversations became quieter. Not silent. Never silent. That would have been vulgar. People simply began listening without appearing to listen. Alara felt the old pressure beneath her ribs. Adrian watched her. He knew that expression. He had spent 6 years learning exactly how long she could remain composed before pain reached her face. Cecily continued sweetly. Still, I admire your courage. I am not certain I could attend the engagement of a man who once chose me and later discovered we were unsuited. There it was. Elegant cruelty. No insult anyone could openly condemn. Nothing crude enough to defend against. Only a knife wrapped in silk. Alara heard someone shift behind her. Adrian finally spoke. Cecily, but the warning lacked force. His eyes remained on Alara, waiting. wanted something. A tremble. A hurried excuse. A tear. Proof that somewhere beneath her beautiful dress, she remained the woman he had broken. Elara looked past him. That was when she saw the stranger. He stood near one of the tall windows overlooking the moonlit gardens. Alone. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Dark-haired. Perhaps 35. His black evening coat was immaculate, but almost severe, compared with the jeweled extravagance surrounding him. He held no wine. He seemed to be studying the room rather than participating in it. Elara had never seen him before. More importantly, Adrian had not noticed him. A reckless idea entered her mind. She dismissed it. Then Adrian said quietly, "You needn't prove anything tonight, Elara." That sentence did it. Because it sounded gentle. Because it was intended to sound gentle. Because she remembered hearing the same voice after discovering he had secretly used part of her inheritance to cover his debts. "You needn't concern yourself with these matters." Something inside her snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. It simply refused to bend again. Elara stepped around Adrian. She walked across the ballroom. Once. Twice. 3 steps. Then 10. Whispers followed. The stranger noticed her when she was halfway toward him. His eyes narrowed slightly. Elara had enough time to reconsider. She did not. She stopped directly before him. "Forgive me." One dark eyebrow lifted. "For what?" Elara placed one hand against his chest, then kissed him. The ballroom disappeared. There was no music, no Adrian, no Cecily, no scandal. Only the horrifying awareness that she was kissing a complete stranger in front of nearly 200 members of respectable society. His body went rigid with surprise. For half a heartbeat, she feared he would push her away. He did not. His hand came lightly to her waist, not pulling her closer, merely steadying her when her courage nearly failed. Then Elara ended the kiss. She stepped back. Reality returned all at once. Nobody was speaking. Even the musicians had stopped. Elara's face burned. The stranger looked at her. His expression was unreadable. "I am so terribly sorry," she whispered. His gaze moved over her shoulder, toward Adrian. Something changed in his face. Recognition, then amusement. He looked back at Elara. "Lady Elara Vane?" She blinked. "You know me?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he raised his voice just enough for the nearest guests to hear. "You neglected to tell me, Crestwood, that your former wife was the woman I crossed 3 counties to find." Elara stopped breathing. Behind her, someone dropped a glass. Adrian's face lost its color. The stranger extended his hand toward Elara with almost insulting calm. "Since introductions appear to have been forgotten, perhaps I should correct the oversight." He bowed. "Lucian Harrow, Duke of Norvale." The silence deepened. Elara stared at him. The Duke of Norvale. She had heard the name. Everyone had. Norvale possessed enormous estates in Northumberland, Durham, and Cumberland. He controlled a significant share of northern shipping contracts and, more importantly, had recently become the principal private investor, deciding whether Adrian's proposed Westmere Canal Company survived. Adrian needed him, desperately, and Elara had just kissed him. Lucian looked toward Adrian again. "I came tonight expecting to discuss your canal proposal." Adrian attempted a smile. "Your Grace, naturally, I fear that discussion will have to wait." Lucian offered Elara his arm. "The lady has suddenly made my evening considerably more interesting." Nobody laughed. Elara suspected half the room had forgotten how. Adrian stared at her hand as she placed it on Lucian's arm. For the first time that night, society was no longer waiting to see whether Elara would break. They were watching Adrian, and judging by the tightening of his jaw, he knew it. Lucian guided her through a pair of doors onto the terrace. The moment they were alone, Elara pulled away. "Oh God." Lucian leaned against the stone railing. "That appears serious." "I kissed the Duke of Norvale." Yes. In front of everyone. I noticed. I used you. Yes. She stared at him. He looked almost entertained. You should be furious. Should I? I assaulted your dignity. My dignity has survived Parliament, 3 harvest failures, and a dinner beside the Austrian ambassador. I suspect it will survive you. Despite herself, Elara laughed. It escaped before she could stop it. Lucian studied her. You look different when you do that. Her smile vanished. I truly apologize. I know. I did not know who you were. That is what made it convincing. She covered her face briefly. This will be everywhere tomorrow. By breakfast. My aunt will murder me. After breakfast, presumably. She lowered her hands. Why did you help me? His humor faded. Because I saw what was happening before you crossed the room. Embarrassment returned. You saw? I watched Crestwood and his fiancée turn your pain into entertainment. She did not technically insult me. No, intelligent cruelty rarely leaves fingerprints. The words struck her. Adrian used to tell her she imagined such things. Lucian had recognized it from across a ballroom. She looked away. You said you came to find me. I did. Why? Lucian reached inside his coat and removed a folded paper. Elara recognized the seal. Westmere Canal Company. Her stomach tightened. I was asked to invest £60,000, Lucian said. That would be a mistake. I thought you might say that. Her eyes snapped to his. Why? Because 3 separate men told me Adrian Crestwood designed the financial structure behind Westmere. He paused. And a 4th told me that whenever Crestwood presents unusually intelligent accounts, I should look for your handwriting. Elara said nothing. Lucian unfolded the paper. I have spent 6 weeks examining this proposal. Something is wrong with the land valuations, but whoever constructed the deception understands estate accounting extremely well. Elara scanned the first page. She saw it immediately. Not the fraud itself. The pattern. Adrian. Lucian watched her expression. You recognize something. I recognize how he hides things. Can you prove it? Perhaps. Footsteps sounded inside. Lucian folded the paper again. Elara, by tomorrow morning, everyone in England will believe you and I are involved. She closed her eyes. I know. That rumor could be inconvenient. For you especially. Actually, I find it useful. She opened her eyes. Lucian continued. For 6 months, every ambitious family in London has attempted to marry a daughter to me. A rumored attachment might buy me some peace. You cannot be suggesting a temporary understanding. Her mouth fell open. No, you have not heard the terms. I kissed you once. I am not making a profession of it. His lips twitched. No further kissing required. That is reassuring. In public, we allow society to believe I am courting you. Elara stared. In private, you help me understand Westmere. And what do I receive? The humor left his eyes. Crestwood has challenged your ownership of Belhaven Farm. Her blood chilled. How do you know that? Because yesterday he asked whether I would purchase it after he recovered the property. Elara went still. Adrian had not merely challenged her settlement. He had already begun planning what to do after taking it from her. Lucian stepped closer. He believes you are isolated. Elara looked through the glass doors. Adrian stood inside watching them. Even at a distance, she recognized possession in his expression. Not love. Never love. Possession. What exactly are you proposing? She asked. Lucian followed her gaze. A strategic courtship. For how long? Until we discover what Crestwood is hiding. And Belhaven? If he moves against you unfairly, he will discover you are no longer standing alone. Elara looked at him sharply. I do not need another man controlling my affairs. Lucian's response came immediately. Good. She frowned. Good? I have no desire to control them. He opened the terrace door. Decide for yourself. Then he stepped aside. Not ahead of her, not directing her, simply leaving the doorway open. Alara stared at that open space for a strange second. A choice. Something so small should not have mattered. Yet it did. She walked back into the ballroom beside him. Adrian was still watching. Alara lifted her head. For the first time since entering Alderwick Hall, she did not care whether he could see her pain. Because something else had replaced it. Curiosity. And perhaps the beginning of danger. The following morning, danger arrived in writing. A solicitor's letter waited beside her breakfast plate. Alara opened it. By the third line, her fingers had gone cold. Lord Adrian Crestwood was no longer merely challenging Belhaven Farm. He was accusing Alara of stealing £18,000 during their marriage. And unless she surrendered Belhaven quietly, he intended to make the accusation public. Lucian read the letter twice. Then he placed it on the table with such careful control that Alara knew he was furious. They sat in the library of his London residence 4 days after the engagement ball. The newspapers had behaved exactly as predicted. The Duke and the divorced beauty. Norvale's mystery woman. A kiss that stopped Alderwick Ball. One particularly imaginative paper claimed Alara and Lucian had been secretly in love for 7 years. They had known each other for 96 hours. This accusation is false, Lucian said. Yes. How false? Alara looked at him. Is there a measurement? I am trying to determine whether Crestwood has manipulated a real transaction or invented one entirely. She appreciated the question. He had not automatically assumed she was helpless. Real transaction. Lucian leaned back. Explain. During the final year of our marriage, Adrian transferred £18,000 from the Crestwood estate reserve. To where? I never discovered that. And he is claiming you took it? Yes. Could he prove the funds passed through an account connected to you? Alara hesitated. That is the problem. She reached for the old ledger she had brought. My dowry trust and the estate reserve used the same banking house. Adrian had authority to request transfers from the household portion while we were married. Lucian examined the entries. You kept copies. I kept copies of everything. Why? Her answer was quieter. Because eventually I learned never to trust anything he said unless I had it written down. Lucian's expression changed. Not pity. She hated pity. This was something closer to anger on her behalf. He tapped the ledger. These records may save you. They may also destroy me. One transfer contains my signature. Did you sign it? Yes. Lucian looked surprised. Adrian told me the money was purchasing neighboring farmland. Was it? No. How did you discover that? Because 6 months later I checked the county deed register. No land was purchased. Lucian became very still. You checked the deed register yourself? Yes. What else did you check? Alara opened another book. Tax assessments, tenant rents, mortgage interest, grain sales, timber contracts. Lucian stared at her. What? Crestwood told everyone you occasionally assisted with household accounts. Alara almost laughed. I managed the entire estate for 4 years. Lucian said nothing. He disliked numbers, she continued. Or perhaps he disliked numbers that told him things he did not want to hear. And when the estate improved, he accepted congratulations. Lucian closed the ledger. Come with me. Where? To my study. The room contained maps, correspondence, ledgers, and enough paper to frighten a minister. Lucian placed the Westmere Canal documents before her. Show me what I missed. Alara stood motionless. What? You said something was wrong with the valuations. You are asking my opinion? I have been asking your opinion since Alderwick. No. You asked whether I recognized Adrian's methods. Lucian pulled out a chair. Then I am correcting my mistake. Sit. There was no mockery in his face. No indulgent smile. He genuinely expected her to know something he did not. Alara sat. 2 hours later, she found the first inconsistency. The western parcels. Lucian leaned closer. What about them? These values are impossible. They have increased because of the planned canal. No. She moved 3 documents side by side. Look at the acreage. Lucian frowned. 412. Here it is, 412. Here, 506. Here, the same property becomes 680. Clerical mistakes? 3 different mistakes, all increasing the value? Lucian's eyes sharpened. Alara continued. Adrian is counting the same land repeatedly, to inflate the collateral. Yes. How much? She calculated. At least 23,000 pounds so far. Lucian slowly leaned back. Good God. Alara looked at the remaining papers. No. No? That is too simple. What do you mean? Adrian is vain. He is dishonest when cornered, but he is not stupid. She pulled another document closer. If he is willing to leave something this obvious here, it is because he expects investors to find it. Lucian stared. You think this is a distraction? I think the real fraud is somewhere else. For the first time, he smiled at her not as a woman who had kissed him impulsively, but as an equal. Then find it. That became their pattern. For 2 weeks, society saw the Duke of Norvale escort Lady Alara Vane to dinners, musicales, and afternoon gatherings. What society did not see were the hours afterwards spent over contracts and ledgers. Lucian never told her what to wear, never told her when to speak, never corrected her in front of others. At Lady Pembroke's dinner, a baron interrupted Alara twice while she discussed tenant grain contracts. Lucian did not rescue her. He simply looked at her and asked, "Would you like to finish your point?" It was such a small thing. Alara nearly forgot what she was saying. Would you like to finish? Not, let me explain. Not, you are confusing everyone. Not, leave these matters to men. Her voice became steadier. Yes, she said. Then she finished. 3 days later, Lucian asked her to examine accounts from one of his own estates. She found a wasteful timber contract within 20 minutes. You were overcharged 800 pounds last year. His steward looked horrified. Lucian looked delighted. That much? You appear strangely pleased. I enjoy discovering that I am an idiot before the mistake becomes more expensive. Alara laughed. He grinned. Something dangerous began happening between them. The arrangement stopped feeling like an arrangement. Lucian began asking what she thought before telling her what he thought. Alara began forgetting to guard every sentence. Then Adrian reminded her why she had learned to guard them. He approached her after a charity concert at Montrose House. Alara. She turned. Lucian was across the room, speaking to an elderly duchess. Adrian noticed. Your protector seems occupied. He is not my protector. Of course. Adrian smiled. How long do you imagine this lasts? She said nothing. You cannot truly believe Norvale intends to marry you. I do not remember asking for your opinion. He will tire of the novelty. There had been a time when those words would have entered her like poison. Adrian stepped closer. You are divorced, publicly notorious, older than half the debutantes chasing him. Do you honestly imagine a duke looked at you and saw his future? Alara heard her former self whisper inside her. Perhaps he is right. Then another voice answered. What do you want to do? Lucian's voice. Not commanding. Asking. Alara met Adrian's eyes. Whether the Duke tires of me tomorrow, or remains beside me for 20 years, is none of your concern. His smile vanished. There she is. Who? The woman who always mistakes stubbornness for strength. Alara started to leave. Adrian caught her wrist. Every muscle in her body froze. The ballroom around them vanished. For one terrible instant, she was back in Crestwood House. Back in the study. Back to arguments ending when Adrian stood too close and lowered his voice. You will surrender Belhaven, he said softly. Release me. You signed the transfer. Release me. You have no idea what I can make that document look like. A hand closed around Adrian's forearm. Lucian. He did not raise his voice. Remove your hand from Lady Alara. Adrian released her. This is a private conversation. Lucian stepped between them. No. A private conversation requires two willing participants. Adrian's face tightened. You are interfering in matters you do not understand. Then explain them to my solicitor tomorrow. That is unnecessary. I disagree. Lucian's tone became colder. If you touch her again after she asks you to stop, Crestwood, our next conversation will be considerably less polite. Several guests had noticed. Adrian saw them. Pride forced him backward. This woman will ruin you, Norvale. Lucian replied. Then at least I shall finally experience an interesting ruin. A few people nearby laughed. Adrian left. Alara stood completely still. Lucian turned. Are you hurt? No. Do you want to leave? She almost said yes, then looked around the room. People were watching. Again, always watching. Adrian had expected her to flee. Her old instinct agreed with him. Lucian waited. No command. No insistence. What do you want to do? There it was again. Alara inhaled. I want to stay. Lucian nodded. Then we stay. That night changed something. Not because Lucian defended her, but because afterward he allowed her to decide what happened next. Over the following weeks, Alara stopped leaving rooms when Adrian entered. She stopped lowering her voice when discussing business. She stopped correcting people who called her Lady Alara rather than poor Lady Crestwood. Most importantly, she found the missing money. It was hidden inside the Westmere accounts. Not directly. Adrian was too careful for that. But Alara recognized an old pattern. Small payments, different names, different counties, all passing through the same banking agent. She followed them. £18,000 from the old Crestwood Reserve had been used years earlier to purchase options on land along the proposed Westmere Canal route. In secret. Under intermediaries. Adrian had then used his influence to redirect the planned canal through those properties. Once investors entered, the land value would increase enormously. The original theft had financed the scheme. And now Adrian intended to use Cecily Harcourt's substantial marriage settlement to cover temporary debts until Norvale and other investors supplied the rest. Alara stared at the final column. Lucian stood beside her. Can we prove it? Almost. Almost is not enough. I know. One name remained unexplained. Mr. Elias Trent. He appeared on 6 transfers. A man who, according to public records, had died 3 years earlier. Yet 2 payments in his name had been made last month. Lucian leaned over the page. A dead man receiving money. Someone is using his identity. Crestwood? Perhaps. Alara's eyes moved toward another document. Then she saw it. A signature. Not Adrian's. Cecily Harcourt's father. Sir Edmund Harcourt. Her future father-in-law was involved. Alara's stomach dropped. This is larger than Adrian. Before Lucian could answer, his butler entered. A letter for Lady Alara, delivered urgently. She opened it. Heavy cream paper. Crestwood seal. Only 4 lines. Lady Alara, your accusations and interference have gone far enough. At the Harcourt engagement dinner on Friday, I intend to explain publicly where the missing £18,000 went. You may surrender Belhaven before then. Otherwise, everyone will learn exactly what kind of woman you are. Alara read it twice. Lucian held out his hand. She gave it to him. His jaw tightened. He is preparing to accuse you publicly. Yes. I can stop the dinner. No. Lucian looked at her. I can speak to Harcourt. No. I can have Crestwood's accounts examined formally before Friday. Alara shook her head. No. Why? Because for the first time, she understood what Adrian expected. He expected her to panic, to hide behind Lucian, to settle quietly, to let a more powerful man fight for her, exactly as he had always believed she would. Elara folded the letter. No more running. Lucian studied her, then slowly nodded. What do you need? Not, what should I do? Not, leave this to me. What do you need? Elara looked at the ledgers spread before them. The truth. She touched the dead man's name. And 3 days to prove it. By Friday evening, every important person connected to the Westmere Canal Company was gathered beneath the painted ceiling of Harcourt House. Bankers, landowners, investors, members of parliament, 2 judges, and enough aristocrats to ensure that anything spoken before dessert would reach London before breakfast. Elara understood why Adrian had chosen the room. He did not merely intend to defeat her. He intended to bury her reputation where everyone could watch. Lucian stood beside her near the entrance. You can still leave. Elara looked at him. Do you want me to? No. Then why say it? Because I want you to know the door remains yours. For a moment, she could not speak. The first man she had married spent years making every door feel locked. The second man, no, not second man. Lucian was not her husband. Their courtship was still a performance, or had been. Lately, Elara no longer knew exactly where the performance ended. She looked toward Adrian. He stood beside Cecily and Sir Edmund Harcourt. Confident, smiling, waiting. I am staying, Elara said. Lucian offered his arm. She took it. Dinner passed with unbearable politeness. Nobody mentioned the scandal. Nobody mentioned the missing money. Nobody mentioned Belhaven, until the final course was removed. Then Adrian rose. My friends, forgive me. Before we discuss the future of Westmere, there is an unpleasant matter I can no longer ignore. Conversation stopped. Elara felt every nerve become alert. Lucian's hand tightened once around the stem of his glass. Adrian continued. Many of you know that my former wife and I endured a difficult separation. Cecily lowered her eyes. Perfectly rehearsed. I have attempted to protect Lady Elara from embarrassment. Unfortunately, recent interference in my business affairs makes silence impossible. He looked directly at her. During our marriage, £18,000 disappeared from the Crestwood Estate Reserve. Whispers began. Adrian lifted a document. This transfer bears Lady Elara's signature. Elara did not move. I had hoped never to reveal it. A woman near the fireplace whispered something behind her fan. Adrian continued. Instead of repayment, Lady Elara later received Belhaven Farm under our settlement. There it was. The lie. Elegant. Simple. Believable. He was making Belhaven look like payment for stolen money. If she quietly returned the property, Adrian said, I would consider the matter closed. Several faces turned toward Elara. Others turned toward Lucian, waiting. They expected the Duke to stand, to threaten, to defend, exactly as Adrian expected. Lucian pushed back his chair. Elara touched his arm. He looked down. She stood. No. The room became quiet. Lucian's eyes searched hers. Elara said softly, This one is mine. Something almost like pride appeared in his face. He sat again. Elara turned toward Adrian. You are correct about one thing. His expression flickered. I signed that transfer. Whispers intensified. Adrian smiled. Elara walked toward the center of the room. On March 14th, 1819, £18,000 left the Crestwood Reserve. Yes, Adrian said. You told me the money would purchase farmland east of the estate. I told you no such thing. Elara smiled faintly. That was the Adrian she remembered. Deny first. Confuse second. Attack third. Fortunately, she said, I stopped relying on memory while married to you. A footman entered carrying a leather case. Elara opened it. Inside were ledgers, copies, letters, receipts. Adrian's smile weakened. I kept records of every significant transaction I signed. She produced a letter. This is your instruction, asking me to authorize the transfer for the purchase of neighboring land. Adrian laughed. A private note proves nothing. Agreed. Alara placed it down. So I checked whether the land was purchased. She produced county records. It was not. Several investors leaned forward. Adrian's face hardened. This is irrelevant. No, this is where it becomes interesting. She looked toward Sir Edmund Harcourt. The older man's face had already gone pale. The £18,000 was divided across 6 intermediary accounts. Sir Edmund shifted. Alara continued. Those accounts purchased options on land surrounding the planned Westmere Canal. A banker near Lucian muttered a curse. Adrian scoffed. Land speculation is not illegal. No, Alara agreed calmly. Stealing estate funds to finance it is. You signed the transfer. Yes. The triumph returned to his face. Then perhaps you should explain why. I already have. No. You have explained what you claim I told you. He looked around the room. My former wife has always been imaginative when cornered. The old phrase. The familiar tone. Almost the same words he used years earlier. You are too emotional to understand these matters. For a heartbeat, Alara felt the old instinct to shrink. Then she saw Lucian. He was doing nothing, exactly as she asked. Trusting her. Alara turned back to Adrian. You always believed emotion made me stupid. I said nothing of the sort. You said it frequently. Alara. And that was your greatest mistake. She removed 6 documents. You assumed that because you dismissed my work publicly, I would stop understanding it privately. Adrian's face changed. Alara laid out the papers. These land options increased in value after the canal route was altered. One investor rose. Altered by whom? Alara looked at Adrian. Lord Crestwood chaired the committee recommending the western route. The room erupted. Adrian raised his voice. This is absurd. Alara continued over him. The larger problem is that several parcels were listed more than once when Westmere sought investment. Lucian's solicitor handed copies to the men at the table. Alara pointed. 412 acres became 506 on one document, then 680 on another. A banker stared at Adrian. You inflated the collateral. Clerical errors. Alara nodded. That is what I initially thought. Adrian looked surprised. She smiled. Then I realized the errors were intentionally obvious. His face went still. You expected investors to discover them, correct them, and feel reassured that they had successfully identified the problem. Nobody moved. The actual deception was hidden elsewhere. Alara produced another ledger. A man named Elias Trent received repeated payments associated with Westmere. Sir Edmund Harcourt suddenly stood. This has gone far enough. Alara looked at him. Please sit, Sir Edmund. How dare you? Lucian began to rise. Alara glanced at him. He stopped. Sir Edmund saw it. So did everyone else. The Duke of Norvale was powerful enough to silence half the room. Yet he was allowing Alara to command it. Sir Edmund sat. Alara continued. Elias Trent died 3 years ago. Confusion spread. Yet money continued moving through an account in his name. Adrian's face had lost all color. Alara looked directly at him. Would you like to explain that? You are inventing conspiracy from bookkeeping. Then perhaps the bank manager can explain. The doors opened. A gray-haired gentleman entered. Adrian actually stepped backward. Mr. Nathaniel Broom bowed to the room. I manage the Harrow and Broom banking house. Alara handed him a document. Who authorized the recent payments under the Trent account? Broom adjusted his spectacles. This document was presented with authority from Sir Edmund Harcourt. Cecily gasped. Every face turned toward her father. Sir Edmund stood again. This is confidential banking information. Broom replied. Not after I discovered the account belonged to a deceased man. Alara placed the final document on the table. Adrian stared at it. He recognized it before she explained. This is the agreement between Adrian Crestwood and Sir Edmund Harcourt. Cecily looked from her father to Adrian. What agreement? Neither man answered. Ilara did. Your marriage settlement was intended to provide £25,000 immediately after the wedding. Cecily's face drained. Ilara, Adrian warned. She ignored him. 15,000 would cover urgent Westmere obligations. The remaining 10,000 would secure additional land before the investment vote. Cecily turned on him. My dowry? Cecily, listen to me. You told me it was protected. It is. No, Ilara said quietly. It is not. Adrian slammed his palm onto the table. Enough. The sound echoed. For the first time that evening, Ilara did not flinch. Adrian saw it. That frightened him more than any document. You think these papers prove theft? He demanded. They prove fraud. You signed the original transfer. Yes. Then you are implicated. There was his final weapon. If he fell, he intended to drag her with him. Adrian stepped closer. You always were too emotional to understand these matters. The sentence hung between them. 6 years of marriage returned in 9 words. Ilara looked at him, then smiled. No, Adrian. She reached into the leather case. You simply never imagined I would understand them better than you. She produced the final paper. His expression collapsed. It was the original bank instruction, not Ilara's signed authorization. The instruction sent before it, Adrian's handwriting. Transfer £18,000 temporarily through the household authorization. Lady Crestwood need not be informed of the ultimate disposition until completion. Silence. Complete silence. Ilara placed it on the table. You kept this? Adrian whispered. No. She looked toward Broom. Your former banking clerk did. Broom nodded. He preserved copies after suspecting irregular instructions. Adrian's eyes moved wildly around the room. Investors. Creditors. Cecily. Her father. Lucian. Everyone he needed. Everyone now staring at him differently. A banker stood. My firm withdraws from Westmere, effective immediately. Another man followed. As does mine. A third said, I will be requesting a formal examination of all company accounts. Sir Edmund whispered, Adrian, you promised this could not happen. Cecily turned on her father. You knew? He did not answer. That answer was enough. She removed her engagement ring. Adrian stared. Cecily. She placed it on the table. You were marrying my money. No. You were marrying my money. She walked out. Adrian looked toward Ilara. Hatred replaced panic. You planned this. No. You ruined me. Ilara shook her head. No, Adrian. I kept records. That sentence struck harder than anger. You ruined yourself. For once, he had nothing to say. By midnight, 2 investors had demanded repayment. By morning, the Westmere Canal Company would be under formal investigation. Within a week, Adrian's creditors would petition for access to his remaining unentailed property. Belhaven would never return to him. Ilara left Harcourt House shortly after 11. Outside, rain shimmered over the street. Lucian joined her beneath the portico. For several moments, neither spoke. Then he said, You stopped me. Yes. I had an excellent speech prepared. She looked at him. Did you? Devastating. I am terribly sorry. You should be. She smiled. Lucian studied her. You did not need me tonight. The words should have sounded like an ending. Instead, they frightened her. Perhaps because the investigation was beginning. Adrian was defeated. Belhaven was safe. Their strategic courtship had served its purpose. Lucian seemed to understand the thought. The scandal will fade, he said. Yes. Crestwood cannot threaten your property now. No. And every marriage-minded mother in London knows I am apparently capable of kissing divorced women in ballrooms, so I suspect my reputation is permanently damaged. Ilara laughed. Then silence returned. Lucian looked toward the waiting carriage. "You don't need me standing beside you anymore." There it was, exactly what she had once wanted. Freedom. No obligation. No arrangement. No man deciding what happened next. Alara felt something inside her ache. Lucian stepped backward. "I meant what I told you at Alderwick. When this ended, the choice would be yours." She looked at him. "My choice? Entirely. And if I choose to leave, I will wish you happiness." The answer hurt more than it should. "And if I choose to stay?" For the first time since she met him, Lucian seemed uncertain. That would depend on why. Alara approached him. He did not move. She stopped close enough to remember another night, another ballroom, another kiss. The first time, her hands had trembled. She had kissed a stranger because she could not bear for society to see that another man had hurt her. Lucian looked at her mouth, then back at her eyes. His voice softened. "Who are you trying to convince this time?" Alara smiled. "No one." Then she kissed him. Not desperately. Not publicly. Not to make Adrian jealous. Not to silence whispers. Not to prove she had recovered. Because she wanted to. Lucian remained perfectly still for one surprised heartbeat. Then his hand touched her face. The kiss deepened slowly. When they separated, his forehead rested against hers. "Alara." "Yes? That was not part of our agreement." "I know. You have just complicated matters considerably. I seem to have a talent for that." His quiet laugh warmed the space between them. Then he became serious. "I will not ask you tonight." "Ask me what?" "You know what." Her heart beat faster. Lucian continued. "You spent years having choices taken from you. I will not turn freedom into another kind of pressure." Alara stared at him. The strange thing was, that made her more certain. "You once asked what I wanted." "I remember. Nobody had asked me that in years." His expression softened. "And now?" She looked toward the street, toward the waiting carriage, toward a future that finally belonged to her. Then back at him. "Now I know." Lucian said nothing. Alara took his hand. "I do not want you because Adrian lost." His fingers tightened around hers. "I do not want you because you are a duke." She stepped closer. "And I do not want you because I need someone to protect me." A faint smile touched his mouth. "That last part has become painfully obvious." She laughed. Then her voice softened. "I want you because when I finally learned how to stand alone, you were the first man who did not try to make me smaller, so I would stand beside him." Lucian's amusement disappeared. For once, the Duke of Norvale had no clever answer. Alara smiled. "Have I finally silenced you?" "Temporarily." "Excellent." He raised her hand and kissed her fingers. "Then perhaps tomorrow, I may ask my question." "You may." "And your answer?" Alara looked at him beneath the rain-dark London sky. "Ask me tomorrow." He narrowed his eyes. "That is cruel." "No." She opened the carriage door herself. "That is choice." Lucian laughed as she climbed inside. 3 months later, when the Duke of Norvale finally married Lady Alara Vane, society insisted their romance had begun with the most scandalous kiss of the season. Society was wrong. The kiss had only been the moment Alara stopped pretending she was untouched by pain. Love began later. It began with an open door. A simple question. "What do you want to do?" And by the time Alara answered it, she no longer needed a powerful man to save her. She had saved herself. She simply chose to love the man who understood the difference.